I'm not going to dive into all of the aspects because this video is already quite long, but I will touch on the most important ones and their symbolism. On July 20th, Mars ingressed into Gemini, bringing fierce, determined communication and energizing the mind. Mars is the warrior archetype, Aries, ruling over the divine masculine collective, and encompassing the energy we embody when we go after something that we want or pursue something of our desire. Since Gemini is a sign related to media, journalism, communication, marketing, social media, and writing, we may see increased fighting and division playing out through these mediums, especially on social media. This "I'm right, you're wrong" is the energy of polarity and separation. It creates internet wars out of an egoic need to be right, which will be amplified because Jupiter is in Gemini. However, Pluto in Aquarius wants stoic, eagle-eye detachment. Try to look at both parties and find neutrality. Pluto opposite Venus and Black Moon Lilith with South Node in Libra. Pluto in Aquarius opposite Venus in Leo, and Black Moon Lilith co-present with South Node in Libra. This was activated the weekend of July 12th through 14th, when we had Venus in Leo, the planetary ruler of the Mars-Uranus conjunction, and the South Node in Black Moon Lilith in Libra, opposite Pluto in Aquarius, with the moon transiting Libra, during the first quarter moon phase, which puts the moon and sun in a challenging 90-degree angle or square to one another, calling for a need to integrate two conflicting energies. The half moon in Libra can flare up family issues, health problems, challenges at work, conflict with the opposite sex, and public disagreements, especially ones that play out on the internet. It is highly important to think before you act or react, which only adds more fuel to the fire, especially with Mars conjunct Uranus on demon star Algol, 26 degrees Taurus. All of this is amplifying the dark feminine archetype. We're watching shadow Venusian traits play out that have been dominant over the past 2,000 years during the age of Pisces, but we're watching them play out so that they can dissolve. Saturn and Neptune co-present in Pisces, as we prepare to shift into the next 2,000 years in the age of Aquarius. These patterns include, but are not limited to, manipulating others for financial security and stability, guilt-tripping, or woe is me manipulation, or victim playing manipulation, victim consciousness, and the avoidance of processing emotions through patterns of repression, running away, or escaping them through some mind-altering substance. Could even be a pattern of projecting these emotions onto someone else, in so doing affecting their peace and making them someone else's responsibility to self-regulate rather than your own. Pluto opposite Venus brings intensity, chaos, and deep transformation to Venus-ruled things, but especially our finances and interpersonal relationships. Venus recently went through a rebirth on June 4th, 2024, during what's called a Venus Cazimi, her conjunction with the Sun. Cazimi comes from the Arabic term "in the heart of," so Venus was traveling through the heart of the Sun, where she is said to be reborn. This was her superior conjunction to the Sun, when she's not visible from our Earth-based perspective due to the conjunction occurring on the far side of the Sun outside of view from Earth. This superior conjunction is a multi-month period of introspection and reflection, and it's symbolic of Persephone's time in the underworld, with the underworld and Hades, Pluto, representing the depths of our psyche. Venus has a very interesting orbit. She follows 18-month cycles, during which she appears, disappears, and reappears. Just as Persephone spends half her time here on Earth with Demeter, she spends the other half of her time in the underworld as Hades' wife, or queen of the underworld. Venus spends half her time as a morning star and half her time as an evening star. When Venus is a morning star, she can be visible at sunrise. When she's an evening star, she's visible at sunset. To the ancient Greeks, morning Venus was phosphorus, which translates to mean bringer of light. Phosphorus burns really brightly, you'll see it in fireworks. While in the evening, she is Hesperus, meaning western, because the sun would set in the west. The archetypal energy of morning star Venus people, and there is a difference between if you're born with Venus as a morning star or an evening star, I'll get into that in a bit. The archetypal energy of Venus morning star light bearers are guided by the heart and emotions over logic. Morning star Venus people tend to be free-spirited and adventurous, but they struggle to hide their true emotions. They tend to wear their heart right on their sleeve. There may be a need to process emotions verbally through talking it out or journaling. This is when fools rush in energy, and it can get very hurt if it's not careful, as it can be very prone to manipulation by those who would seek to take advantage of their warm, open hearts. Trust me, I get it. I'm a morning star Venus. Venus is my planetary ruler. I have a Libra stellium. And Venus is in the 12th house, rising with my ascendant. If you're an astrology enthusiast, you know what I mean. In stark contrast, The archetypal energy of evening star Venus takes its time warming up to other people. It prefers to reveal its deeper emotions slowly, over time. Venus evening star people prefer to process those emotions internally before attempting to express them or share them with others. When heartbreaks occur, it can take a very long time for evening star people to get over it. They may be prone to rumination, so pay careful attention to your mind. Don't let it wander for too long. And even if they never speak to their ex again, they may think about them for years and decades. Let's go over how to determine whether you're a Venus star morning person or a Venus star evening person. And from those archetypal energy patterns, you might already have an idea. Back with that toxic karmic relationship that I was in, he was very much an evening star Venus. I was a morning star Venus. It conflicted. We both thought our way of processing emotions was the better way. So the easiest way to tell if you're a morning star Venus or an evening star Venus person is to pull up your chart. If Venus is clockwise from your sun, or an earlier zodiac sign, a sign that comes preceding the one where your sun falls, you would be a morning star Venus person. If Venus is positioned counterclockwise from your sun, or at a zodiacal sign that would come after your sun sign, you are an evening star Venus. If your Venus and sun are in the same sign, like me, you'll need to check the degrees. Get precise here. I'll use my own chart as an example. Do you see how Mercury, Venus, and the sun are all rising with my ascendant in the same sign, creating that Libra stellium? Since my natal Venus is 8 degrees Libra and my natal sun is 14 degrees Libra, this makes Venus a morning star. Without knowing my birth time, you can also tell that I was born during sunrise, because my sun and my ascendant are in the same sign. This is another neat astrology party trick that you can keep up your sleeve. Pretty cool, right? What you see is absolutely what you get with me. So to review, if your sun and Venus are in the same sign, and your Venus is at a lesser degree than your sun sign, you're a morning star Venus. If it's the other way around, if your Venus is at a higher degree than your sun, you're an evening star Venus. If your sun and Venus are at the exact same degree, you'll have to get even more precise and look at those tiny little numbers to the right of the degree symbol, the arc minutes. That's really rare. You were born during a Venus Cazimi. So in the weeks leading up to Venus's reemergence as an evening star, which happens at the beginning of Leo season, Pluto activates this energy by opposition, bringing what was reflected upon during May, June, and most of July, while Venus was reflecting and introspecting, Persephone was down in the underworld, up to the light of consciousness for healing. The Mars-Uranus conjunction on Algol happens in the sign of Taurus, which is a sign ruled by Venus. So it's all part of the story. It's also important to note that Venus, Aphrodite, and many other feminine energies in Greek mythology did not marry for love. Hera, Juno, wife of Jupiter or Zeus in astrology, married unhappily to a man who could not stay faithful to her. And there are many stories where Hera has revenge plots. Aphrodite was forced by Zeus and Hera to marry Hephaestus, after essentially winning her, defeating Ares in battle. Hephaestus adored Aphrodite, but she did not return his affections. She had an affair, multiple affairs, with her, what we believe to be her true soulmate, Ares, Mars, Venus and Mars, producing many notable offspring and giving birth to tales of forbidden love all over the world. Romeo and Juliet, Tristan and Isolde. Ares was her true love, and it's the union she would have chosen had she had the power of choice. Aphrodite's love for Ares must not have been that true, however, because she later fell in love with a handsome mortal man, Adonis. Adonis enjoyed hunting, and despite being devilishly handsome, he was said to be the product of, I don't think I can say the I word here on YouTube, so I'm going to say, very cleverly here, be careful with my words, he was the product of an improper relationship between his mother and his mother's father, who were of Syrian descent. It was his beauty that caused Aphrodite, even from birth, to notice him and to keep an eye on him until he reached age of maturity, where she ultimately fell in love with him. Adonis died young, while on a hunt, and this was because Ares had disguised himself as a boar, a wild boar, and engorged him with his horns, out of, one can only presume, possessive, jealous rage. Devastated, Aphrodite pleaded with Zeus to bring him back, and Zeus agreed to do so out of affection for Aphrodite. Adonis therefore became symbolic of transformation, rebirth, regeneration, the 4 seasons, hunting, and farming. Aphrodite, Venus, had to plunge into the depths of the underworld in order to bring him back, symbolic of what's happening with the astrology today. I'm going to read you a couple quotes from this phenomenal book. If you don't have it already, Liz Green's Saturn, A New Look at an Old Devil. Really good book. The Piscean era, with its pronouncement of sex as evil and of death as the gateway to never-ending heaven or hell, this kind of conditioning runs deep, as it has been with us for 2,000 years, and even the more liberal-minded and scientifically inclined have the same collective heritage of fear, superstition, and fascination about this area of the human experience. When Venus reemerges as an evening star, this will happen while Venus is still in Leo, but while the Sun is in Leo as well during Leo season, which is ruled by the Sun, amplifying the solar plexus and the heart chakras. For Venus and all things Venus ruled. The Venus archetype, the yin energy within each of us, our feminine side, the divine feminine collective, our daughters, sisters, mothers, significant others, girlfriends, wives, what we love, value, and invest our time or energy into, our money and our resources, even the things that we do for work to acquire those resources and to build our self-confidence. It could include our self-confidence. Pluto's opposition is activating the dark feminine archetype, highly chaotic energy, and this is as the divine feminine desperately seeks to regain the imbalances of power over the past 2,000 years in the Piscean era. This can manifest as displaced anger and aggression. It's important to remember to use this energy wisely and compassionately, as it directly influences your quality of life. We must not allow illusions of power to ignite chaotic or destructive patterns within, or to lead us into a path of addiction. Black Moon Lilith and South Node in Libra the next 6 months helps paint the picture. Black Moon Lilith in Judaism is the story of the first wife of Adam who refused to submit to him. And because she did so, she was banished from Eden, cast out as a harlot and an outcast in society, and honestly painted to be quite a demonic being, whether or not that's true. You can see similar parallels to that with anyone practicing tarot, astrology, herbalism in later years, cast out as witches and burnt at the stake. So it really depends on whose perspective you're listening to, the patriarchies or the divine feminine. Black Moon Lilith is therefore symbolic of the patriarchy's suppression of divine feminine power over the past 2,000 years during the Piscean era. Lilith was replaced by Eve in the Christian origin story Adam and Eve, where Eve was far more submissive and controllable, just the way the patriarchy wants you, and later blamed for accepting the fruit of temptation from the serpent, symbolic, yet again, of the patriarchy's suppression of divine feminine intuitive powers the past 2,000 years. You see, you are much easier to control as an outcast when you're cast as a harlot, a witch, a crazy person, or a leper, or otherwise banished from society, or made to feel as though you don't belong, isolated, angry, and divided. It is ironic that in our society, the prostitute, or modern day OF content creator, I can't say what OF stands for, but hopefully you can read between the lines with me here. It is ironic that in our society, the prostitute or OF creator, who is at least honest about the wares that she sells, is despised and generally ends up in jail, while the wife, who fundamentally plays the same role and buys her security with her body, is glorified because society condones the mask. There are a great many women who trade their sexual favors for a legal tie, which promises them financial security, and a great many men who buy these favors in exchange for what have been euphemistically termed a husband's rights. This is on page 23, Liz Green, Saturn, specifically in the section about Saturn in Scorpio or Saturn in the 8th house, in case you're curious. So what's Black Moon Lilith? Black Moon Lilith is not a planetary body, but instead it's a geographical point representing the dark side of the moon at its furthest point in its orbit, at its apogee. In astrology, this dark side of the moon represents the shadow feminine archetype and our patterns of self-disempowerment. Black Moon Lilith is therefore an energy of breaking free of control and things that we perceive to have power or control over us. On the positive, Black Moon Lilith represents the ability to set boundaries and assert one's needs and independence, especially if you come from a background of having your personal power suppressed, such as I did with narcissistic abuse dynamics, both within my immediate family and within romantic relationships. I manifested that very toxic relationship during the COVID-19 pandemic that I will forever be grateful for, because it was through that relationship and through the corresponding multi-year plunge into my shadow side and the depths of my psyche that I learned the common denominator of those relationships was myself and how I was showing up in those relationships. It woke me up to my own internal patterns of self-disempowerment through codependency and people-pleasing. Some very shadow Libra traits that are coming into play for the collective right now. It took falling for a man who ended up being the mirror image of my own mother for me to break the chain of settling for less than I deserve, which was something that felt comfortable to me, having been conditioned that way by an incredibly manipulative, Machiavellian, vengeance-seeking, dark feminine mother figure with a long history of addiction issues, an inability to emotionally self-regulate her extreme emotions, and an inability to take any accountability for her own words and actions, instead projecting the blame and scapegoating her family. She had a history of verbal and emotional abuse, not only towards myself, but long before me, my Mars and South Node in Libra, Taurus moon, conflict avoidant, father, and both of my older brothers. We will never know for sure, because the hardest part about NPD, Narcissistic Personality Disorder, is that they typically think that there's nothing wrong with them, despite the obvious signs of nobody wanting to visit or be around their energy, because of how chaotic and exhausting and emotionally draining it can be. I liken narcissists to energy vampires, because that is absolutely the effect they have. They want to feed off of your energy, and in so doing, they affect your peace. And there is no price you can put on the value of your peace. Because they tend to think that there's nothing wrong with them, they tend to avoid therapy. They never seek it. They don't really want to know or have it reflected back to them what's going on in their own world. If my mother were to talk to a therapist or see a psychiatrist even, they would likely conclude that she has both BPD, borderline personality disorder, and NPD, narcissistic personality disorder. I have a working theory about narcissism, sociopaths, psychopaths, and I can break down those dark triad energies for you. I have a theory that something happened to her, something traumatic, and she says she has a perfect childhood. It's another red flag. My ex said the same thing. Perfect childhood? Nobody had a perfect childhood. Let's be real. We all have trauma, whether it's micro traumas. We all have something to work through. Something happened to her around age 12, 13, where she was essentially emotionally stunted at that age, and well into adulthood, she is now 73 years old. She continues to behave with the emotional maturity of a 12 or 13-year-old. She will hang up on you. She will fly off the handle if you dare to set a boundary. If you question her lucidity, she will turn around and accuse you of being abusive. So my working theory is that with narcissists, the trauma happens sometime where they're old enough to develop some empathy, but not much. It's pretty minimal. It's more focused on the self, and they seem to be fueled by shame and then later guilt. With sociopaths, the trauma seems to happen at such a young age, 3, 4, 5, where they haven't had an opportunity to fully develop their empathy centers of the brain. And while sociopaths are capable of maybe a teeny tiny bit of empathy, it's more like understanding. It's more of the logical side of like, oh, I get that. Something bad happened to you? That sounds really hard. If you share something with someone and they're only capable of saying, I get that, that sounds really hard, that's not empathy, that's understanding, and it comes from the logical functions of the brain, not the empathy centers. With sociopaths, this trauma tends to happen at that young age before that's fully developed. Now, sociopaths, they tend to be highly intelligent and highly manipulative, so they can imitate empathy. They can take your energy, and this is why both narcissists and sociopaths want to be around you, because they feed off your energy so that they can mimic it and improve the mask that they wear in society. Psychopaths, on the other hand, there tends to be some sort of genetic component some of the time, or, as in the case with this toxic karmic twin flame, he alleged to have had 8 or 9 concussions while he played rugby in college. There is a lot of research and evidence out there about traumatic brain injuries and multiple concussions, and how that can potentially affect the emotional and empathy centers of one's brain. There is also a lot of research out there about long-term or chronic use of Adderall and the effect that can have on suppressing the empathy centers of the brain. Psychopaths tend to have a parent, if it's genetic, who falls somewhere on the antisocial personality spectrum, APD. They themselves tend to fall on the antisocial personality disorder spectrum as well. So, to review, sociopaths and narcissists are made. They are created as a response, as a reaction to their trauma. It is possible for a narcissist to get better if they can get past the resistance of talking to a therapist. Sociopaths, the jury is still out. I'd like to see more evidence on it, but I'd like to think that perhaps you're capable of at least trying to understand the effects your behavior has on other people, if the sociopaths can get past the joy they seem to experience in tearing other people down. That's where you lose me. Psychopaths, I really don't see it. As the only female and youngest child in my nuclear family, it became essentially my role, and Libra stellium, here we go, to essentially babysit this woman until about age 30, when I had had enough. I had to keep her sober. I had to regulate her emotions before even thinking about my own, just to create some semblance of peace in the home. As at this point, so my brothers are 10 and 12 years older than me. They were out of the house by the time my parents split up in 1998. They were not present much through the 3-year custody divorce or battle. So I essentially have 2 older brothers, but I also have the experience of being an only child in this way. And it was the divorce, a series of unfortunate events that happened right after the divorce. My mom lost her mom, and my dad had told me that my mom didn't treat her mom well most of her life. So I think that this was when my mom's mom came down with lung cancer. This was really traumatic for her, and she did everything she could to be by her bedside, but I don't think she ever got over the loss of her mother. And that was 4 days before my 10th birthday on October 4th, 2000. Shortly after that, after losing her husband, losing our family as she knew it, losing her 2 older sons who flew the coop back in the late 90s. You flew the coop and you didn't come home. And she had a little bit of that empty nest with her 2 boys and just me left. But she was going through so much emotional pain that she was not able to be a present mother. Shortly after those unfortunate events, and we also were supposed to have moved to Raleigh, North Carolina, where my mom was building and designing her dream home, and I guess my dad wasn't really on board because he had other plans, and he left her. At no fault of his own. I wouldn't learn until far later why he left her and just how abusive she had been toward him. After this series of unfortunate events for my mom, we also lost our 2 childhood dogs and a cat that had reached age 22, but she had rescued as a kitten, and my mom has a cancer, so you can imagine how rough it is for someone with cancer energy who gets really, really attached to their animals and the strays that they take in to let go of them. So these are all components and things that happened with my mom that led her into a really dark path where she couldn't forgive my father. She, instead of putting me first in the divorce, she used me as a pawn in her many revenge plots, and the Civil War is still going. She is still living like it's 1998, 1999. I'll give you another story in just a moment. She would pressure me to steal things from my dad that weren't really hers, that he had possession of just so that he couldn't have them. And it was a horrible position to be in as a child. I remember being asked by the judge in 1998 which parent I would want to live with, and I remember wanting to say my dad, but not having the courage to do so, because I knew how explosive my mother would become. I just saw Third Eye Blind for the second time on Friday. They came to Philadelphia to play a show, and How's It Gonna Be is a song that got me through that divorce, and if you don't know it, I encourage you to look up the lyrics because they're pretty heavy, but that is the song that got me through those really turbulent times. Despite all of those emotional setbacks, my mother was still able to function. The alcohol problems didn't really start until closer to the end. Middle school, I'd say age 13 for me. There are some memories where she was drinking heavily, and a little bit in high school, and then college. Once I left the nest, it really got bad when she was completely alone. But my mother was in a toxic relationship. I talked about it in the last Cancer New Moon video. I talked about her 18-year relationship with the stray construction worker she brought into our home who didn't pay any bills, didn't pay any utilities, didn't pay rent, didn't help her at all financially aside from occasionally buying groceries, and proceeded to mooch off of my mother, who, despite her many issues, is a self-made, mostly, she inherited some wealth, but a mostly self-made multimillionaire. She's honestly quite impressive, this side of her, but it's these workaholic tendencies that got her there. She, despite fighting for custody of my dad is a very healthy individual with strong boundaries and not a workaholic. He's just here in the present. He doesn't feel any need to work any harder than he has to because he knows he can't take it when he's gone, take it with him when he's gone. He's a Taurus moon. My mother worked in pharmaceuticals, and she was able to climb the ladder pretty high, earning a good income while also, on the side, building her real estate empire. So we had additional streams of revenue coming in from her multiple rental properties, which allowed her to retire very young at age 55. She left pharmaceuticals, and she went into business for herself. So is it any wonder that all 3 of her children are either CEOs of their own business or director level of the company that they work for? It isn't. She's instilled in us this drive that I believe is unshakable. My mother was able to do that, raising me as a single mother for the most part. My dad only was awarded, Pennsylvania, it's pretty tough. It's basically, and I think most of America is this way, it's whoever can afford the better lawyer wins the custody battle. And in this case, that was my mother. So my father, who would have been able to spend more time with me, ended up only winning Wednesdays and every other weekend. And guess what my mom did? Well, she worked all the time, putting me in aftercare, or having me be a latchkey kid and put myself on the school bus and take myself home from school from like 3rd grade on. I was like 9 years old. Back then, it was possibly safe enough to still do that. I would say that's still really risky for a small, young female, especially female child. But nowadays, I absolutely would not suggest doing that. It's just not safe. Anyway, as the only female and the youngest child in that family dynamic, and at this point, the only one left in the picture, it became my duty to essentially babysit this woman until about age 30, right around the time I met this karmic twin flame and was recognizing those patterns of self-disempowerment. I had had enough. I had hid her secrets for years, and I had decided it was time to tap into that moon conjunct Mars, sun in the 1st house, descendant in Aries, all that Aries energy that I had in me all along. It was time to tap into that power and to balance it with my Libra, that other focused Libra nature. To learn how to live with autonomy and independence, not only from her, but from everyone in my family. That Saturn in Capricorn and Capricorn stellium that I have had to shake this very painful path of feeling like I had to sacrifice my own life, my dreams, and even my peace for the sake of keeping the peace for the family and for hiding our secrets. It was not fair to me, so I ultimately had to break free from the family and from dating altogether, while I figured not only who I was, but what I wanted, without the familial enmeshments and the projections of other people and their expectations of who they thought I was and who they wanted me to be. I'm sharing this with you because many of you might be at this stage of your journey where you're finding it hard to figure out or discern what your own wants and needs are around other people's projections and expectations of you. This is a very Libra pattern that's coming into play with Black Moon Lilith and South Node in Libra. It may be time for you to break away from these unhealthy enmeshments and attachments and to discern who you are, what you want, and to tap into greater self-empowerment and autonomy. Additionally, Black Moon Lilith is forming a trine to Pluto, amplifying these power dynamics that, with Pluto opposite Venus, are playing out in our interpersonal relationships. This is part of a Grand Air Trine, also involving Sedna, which I'll dive into in a few minutes. After 9 months in Virgo, bringing up themes of self-disempowerment through patterns of self-doubt, self-criticism, rumination, perfectionism, and workaholism, while Black Moon Lilith was in Virgo, Black Moon Lilith will be transiting Libra for the next 9 months. This is a supercharged karmic release period because it's co-present with the South Node in Libra. The past life, generational karma that we've brought into this life for healing. Once we shed those karmic patterns, once we learn to heal them, that South Node has some very powerful gifts and talents for you to tap into. But you have to do the work first. This supercharged karmic release period is for Black Moon Lilith shadow feminine issues within the context of Libra. It'll be heightening relationship dynamics related to not only feeling accepted, but feeling unlovable or as though we're not enough, triggering abandonment and rejection wounds, and bringing up themes of isolationism, conflict avoidance, codependency, people-pleasing, and giving far too much power to the opinions of other people, chasing likes and seeking attention, which are short-lived external forms of validation, when the universe and God, whatever you deem that to be, wants you to look within for that source. In shadow, Libra is an energy that struggles with boundaries and enmeshment, the attachments we form out of a fear of being alone. Speaking from personal experience as a Libra stellium, this period of isolationism and aloneness, which I went through 2021, parts of 2022, is actually essential. This was when Saturn was in Aquarius, so it's really not too surprising. This period of isolation and aloneness is actually essential for not only uncovering who you authentically are, but freeing yourself of those unhealthy attachments and enmeshments. The masks and facades that many hide behind will be falling off as we learn to embrace the authentic individual underneath, waiting to burst out for Pluto's uninterrupted progress through Aquarius, 2024 through 2044. This is highlighting those darker shadow traits of Libra, especially towards the beginning of the 9-month transit, since Black Moon Lilith and South Node in Libra are coming into conjunction. This is intensifying as we approach August and September of 2024, and carrying into, with the exact conjunction, and carrying into September and October for Libra season when the Sun is in Libra, and the upcoming South Node new moon solar eclipse in Libra on October 2nd, 2024, and the full moon in Aries on October 17th, 2024. Themes include relationship drama, sore spots, and power struggles within our relationships, feeling triggered by other people and our interpersonal connections, powerful connections, and powerful confrontations. But it all depends on your relationship. Not all relationships will fall apart. Anytime these types of triggers arise, there's an opportunity to work together through it and grow not only your individual selves stronger, but make the relationship stronger as well. There's also an opportunity to avoid doing the work and to run away, where you will miss that opportunity. As we bring these karmic relationship patterns into the light of consciousness for healing, we can transmute them, heal them, and leave them behind us for good. Doesn't that sound great? The Black Moon works and deals in polarity, functioning by conjunction and direct opposition. So Black Moon Lilith in Libra is activating placements along the Libra-Aries relationship axis of opposition. Both Aries, including where we have the North Node, Chiron, and Eris, which I'll get into those a little bit later, and Libra placements are getting lit up by this transit over the next 9 months, but especially the next 6 months, and especially the early degrees, as the South Node completes its journey in Libra, ending January 2025. Libra stelliums like myself will be tested. Aries stelliums will be tested. But don't worry, I'm going through it right here with you, same as all of you. Hopefully I've healed most of these patterns, if not all of them, thanks to my karmic twin flame back in 2020, 2021, 2022. And I now feel prepared to guide the collective in the work that I do. The next 6 months marks a period of significant relationship changes, especially when we consider that Mars-Uranus conjunct Algol, 26 degrees Taurus, is answering to ruling body Venus, the planetary ruler for the Black Moon Lilith and South Node in Libra. Mars and Uranus brings sudden changes. People with dominant Venusian energy, people with strong Libra and strong Taurus energy or placements, have been the epicenter of transformations, upgrades, and changes since May 2023, for quite some time now, when Jupiter first entered Taurus, and July 2023, when the South Node entered Libra, first hitting those later degrees of Libra. Now we're at 10 degrees Libra, and the next 6 months will be focused on placements from 10 to 0 degrees Libra, as the South Node prepares to enter Virgo in January 2025, and the North Node opposite, Pisces 2025. Let's dive into the Grand Air Trine forming between Pluto and Aquarius, Sedna and Mars in Gemini, and Black Moon Lilith in Libra. Grand Air Trines are beautiful energy patterns. I am lucky enough to have one in my natal chart. Here you can see mine forms between my North Node 4 degrees Aquarius, my Mercury 4 degrees Libra, which is conjunct my Venus 8 degrees Libra, my Ascendant 12 degrees Libra, and my Sun, but barely. It's 10 degrees, so that's as far out as you'll go with the conjunction. Those are all fused together though in my Libra stellium, my Sun 14 degrees Libra, forming a Grand Air Trine to, and this is where Venus comes into the picture with that conjunction with Mercury, forming a Grand Air Trine to my Vesta 0 degrees Gemini, Moon 9 degrees Gemini, and Mars nearby 13 degrees Gemini. This formation is called a Grand Air Trine. You could also technically consider my part of fortune, 17 degrees Aries in the 5th house, part of the equation, depending on how tight of an orb you use when you consider the conjunctions. This Grand Air Trine we're having right now is involving some astrological bodies that carry dark, heavy, albeit deeply transformative energies. And it's happening at the critical degrees of the air signs. Our mind, intellect, thought patterns, communication, and how those manifest in our 3D realities. Happening at the critical degrees, so we have Mars and Sedna in the 0 and 1st degree of Gemini. We have Black Moon Lilith, which was just 0 and 1 degrees, now 2 degrees. So just coming out of the critical degree, it's now in the 2nd degree of Libra. And we have Pluto, 0 degrees Aquarius. So happening at the critical degrees makes this even more significant and potent. The Grand Air Trine can be felt strongest, or was felt strongest, from June 25th to July 25th, 2024, and it brings an intense, strong willpower to communicate, write, and create. We also have Jupiter nearby, just out of conjunction, now 12 degrees Gemini, expanding the energy, with Jupiter forming a trine to the South Node in Libra, which South Node in Libra 10 degrees, Black Moon Lilith 2 degrees, those are in a loose operative conjunction as well. So Jupiter's also technically trining that. And this is while Jupiter is sextile the North Node in Aries. Jupiter in Gemini, sextile North Node in Aries. This is mega expansive energy, supporting a powerful transformation potential. Pluto, Hades, ruler of the underworld and depths of our psyches, now 0 degrees Aquarius during its 6-month retrograde period, the exact point where we had the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction on December 12th, 2020, a major part of what brought collective fear, isolation, and lockdowns that carried us into 2021, while Saturn journeyed through lone wolf energy Aquarius, bringing up isolation, lockdowns, social anxiety for many of us as we adapted to a world that had moved online. And Black Moon Lilith, we mentioned just a few moments ago in our in-depth analysis, is the shadow side of the moon, the shadow side of the feminine energy, or patterns of self-disempowerment. Sedna is a dwarf planet, way out in the Kuiper Belt, and it's really interesting because I did a tarot card reading for myself, I guess it was a week and a half ago at this point, and Sedna literally flew out. No surprise. Sedna is an Inuit goddess that was ultimately sent to the depths of the ocean, the depths of the underworld, to be reborn, the ocean floor. She was reborn as a powerful sea goddess that the Inuits would pray to for safe passage when crossing the oceans, much like Poseidon. In the story, she was traveling with a masculine counterpart, and they encountered some rough seas. Out of self-preservation, he decided it would be best to throw her overboard so that he could lighten the load, essentially, and save himself. Great guy. So he threw Sedna overboard, where she desperately clung to the side of the boat for dear life. And then he chopped off her fingers. I feel like my ex would have done the same. Devastated, she fell to the ocean floor, where she was saved and reborn as a powerful sea goddess. We have Neptune, Poseidon, 29 degrees Pisces, ruler of water, but especially the oceans and the seas, all summer at this 29 degree point until early September. I'll have to double check the ephemeris, but early September. I know that Pluto and Neptune are not 29 degrees at the same time, so sometime around when Pluto re-enters 29 degrees Capricorn on September 3rd, Neptune would have already moved on to the 28th degree of Pisces. When Neptune is at 29 degrees, especially in its sign of rulership in Pisces, it indicates a major collective crisis of faith and belief. And with Saturn there in a loose operative conjunction, this is all part of the karmic lessons that are unfolding over the next 6 months. How this could manifest: a collective lack of faith, lack of belief, lack of confidence, feeling exhausted, and feeling really irritable, or possibly even depressed. We have Sun trine Neptune, while the Moon and Pluto sextile Neptune, while Neptune sextiles Uranus, having just aligned with Mars on Algol, the demon star, 26 degrees Taurus, indicating that all of these planetary bodies are working very closely together. This is the energy of creating a new Earth from a spiritual context. Saturn and Neptune, especially conjunct in Pisces, will be working together for the remainder of 2024, all of 2025, and into 2026. It blends the spiritual with the practical. This is the energy needed to give form to our dreams, which we manifest by not only talking about it, but being about it. And we be about it by committing to consistent daily effort over time. Rome was not built in a day, but built layer upon layer over thousands of years. This all happens when we allow the illusions and delusions of the Piscean era, the lies and the deceit, to dissolve and melt away. These aspects also increase our psychic sensitivity, so be very mindful of what mind-altering or numbing substances you are putting into your body, as you may be blocking those gifts. This can also bring mega flooding. Saturn and Neptune conjunct in the late degrees of Pisces, especially with their retrogrades happening simultaneously, indicates dangerous water. This could be rough seas, rip currents, the weaponization of water. We could have vulnerable water treatment plants that get hacked. We could find that there are toxins or pollutants or chemicals in our water supply. There could be a deliberate collapsing of dams to use the force of water as a weapon, flooding smaller villages. I'm thinking more about China when I say this. And it can also include flooding from atmospheric rivers and extreme weather events, which we have seen amplify since Uranus was in Taurus and Saturn first entered Pisces with Neptune March 2023. There's a cardinal T-square focused on Chiron and Eris, aligned 23 to 25 degrees Aries, squaring off against this full moon. The key to any T-square is to find what's missing opposite its focal point, which in this case would fall 23 to 25 degrees Libra, where we have two fixed stars, two powerful fixed stars. The location of Spica, located 23.5 degrees Libra, with an orb of 2.5 degrees plus or minus, and Arcturus, 24 degrees Libra. Astrologically speaking, Spica was considered a good star, one that embodies the energies of yin and yang, Venusian, and Martian energy. And it's the only star of its kind to be both ruled by Venus and Mars, to embody that perfect balance of yin and yang, harmony, or oneness within the self, this perfect blend of the opposite sexes. This blend of yin and yang energy, learning to come into right relationship with the self so that we can come into right relationship or union with another, is the key to navigating the chaos of this full moon. Arcturus is also a lucky or fortunate star, indicating riches, honors, fame, but embodying the combined forces of Jupiter and Mars. Spica and Arcturus can bring great rewards, yes, but we can only be rewarded after first doing the work, having sown the seed and tended to its needs over time through proper care, attention, energy, watering it, pulling weeds, taking care of it. This is the necessary daily dedication to enjoy the fruits of any harvest. Those who reap what they have not sown, such as the wealth of a relative that they mooch off of, use their harvest wastefully, wasting trust funds, or demonstrate that they don't appreciate what they have with gratitude until it's already gone, or deny sharing their resources or their wealth with others by failing to be generous or charitable with either their money, their time, or their energy. There are many ways that you can volunteer. I personally am one who's got some trust issue. Maybe it's all the Capricorn. I've got some trust issues with how other people manage money and all the corruption that I see in the world. There's that North Node Aquarius showing again. I prefer to volunteer my time and energy because I can, control what I put into those hours that I give. And I know that they are going to be treated fairly. So I volunteer as a goat handler and an animal caretaker on a local women-run farm within my community.
I'm seriously the cutest ever.
Do you want to come home with Jenny?
It's official.
You
Yeah,
do?
I'm the cutest.
Yeah, I know.
Hands down, no doubt
I
about
know,
it. Look
baby.
at my hair, look at my eyes, look at my...
So those who reap what they have not sown, use their harvest wastefully, demonstrate that they don't appreciate what they have until it's gone, or that they don't practice gratitude and aren't generous with their resources, their money, their time, and their energy, they will be coming into karma for these behaviors instead of rewards. You have free will. Thank you for watching. If you're still with me, you're a real one. Drop your current most used emoji in the comments. If you took anything away from this video, we ask that you like, comment, share the content, and subscribe. If you enjoyed this video, we know that you'll enjoy the full playlist and this additional video. Thank you so much, love you, and see you soon.